Hello, this is Carrie Bone, emotional intelligence expert and speaker, and I'm joined by Erin Chavis, emotional intelligence expert and corporate consultant. We are leading a series, Burnout to Brilliance, the healthcare leadership series, and this is our first in a line of series that we are going to tackle emotional intelligence issues in the healthcare field. Our healthcare workers and administrators are struggling with various challenges every day, and we are here to help. Welcome, Erin, and are you excited about this series or what?
Yes, hi, Carrie. I am definitely excited. There's so much going on in the world of healthcare around this issue, tons of research popping up all over the place, the impact of COVID, and just other things that are driving this burnout and high anxiety. So,
Yeah.
super excited to be with you so we can offer up some strategies and solutions to our fellow peers in the field. And excited to get started.
Yes. So today we're going to focus on the pain of productivity.
Mm.
Anybody in the healthcare field, admin or clinicians, know that productivity matters. Productivity matters for the bottom line. Productivity matters to keep the business flowing. But productivity also comes with its struggles, and it adds pressure on clinicians as well as administration. So productivity is such a hot topic. So we want to address that one right off the rip. So welcome to the pain of productivity in our first of our series for healthcare emotional intelligence. The first issue that we're going to tackle three issues today: easing the anxiety between clinicians and admin, mediating clinical complaints, and talking about clarifying the value of productivity, like why it is important. It's not going away, so we might as well tackle it head on so that we can tear down those walls that give us all anxiety about it. So the first one we're going to talk about is easing the anxiety between providers, clinicians, and administrators. So with the background that I have is in physical therapy, 23 years. And Erin, what is your background really quick?
Sure. So about 20 years in nonprofit management at the executive level, as well as programmatic level in healthcare, social services, uh, in the Northeast part of the country and so forth. And more so focused on the operational uh, aspects of managing the organization. So bringing that operational lens to bridge the gap between the administration and the providers or clinicians in a way that we don't often see in some of the dialogue that we're talking about. So we're able, you and I are able to offer up multiple perspectives on the issue to really bring solution again to what we see as a huge challenge.
I agree. And so we have a clinician and we have an administrator. And I've been in administration, so I understand the part of it, but everything that I see comes from a clinical aspect, but I do have a perspective from the admin. So we have the best of both worlds here to help you all. So the easing the anxiety between clinicians and administration. So the main thing around productivity is on a daily basis, clinicians are aware of their productivity. When we take the job as a clinician, we are told the expectations of this is what you need to meet productivity. This is what we expect. And this is just not in healthcare. I mean, in any job setting, you have an expectation of productivity, but it's just that in healthcare, we get very specific. You need to see X amount of patients within this time frame. And if you don't meet that productivity level, we're talking about decreased revenue. We're talking about what are you doing? If you're not seeing patients, where are you spending your time? And since I've been in this, healthcare world, 23 years, it's always been just prove to us what you're doing with your time. Some settings are more intense than others. When I worked in the hospital system, that it was a different productivity requirement than home health industry. So each setting has its own unique productivity requirements and its own stressors
Mhm.
Maybe if you're in an actual hospital or outpatient setting, it's a more controlled environment. And sometimes home health can get a little different because you're actually traveling, from point A to point B, and traffic can play a factor, logistics can play a factor. So from a clinician standpoint, some things we can control. What are we doing with our time? And then things we can't control, like patient cancellations.
Mhm.
And again, things like traffic when you're working in home health. So how does admin, can you tell us from an admin perspective, like about the productivity, anxiety that you all feel?
Mhm. Yeah, sort of. I hate to say it. In some ways, it's like chasing numbers, but it's not to say that it's not emotional. It's not a caring thing. It's just the nature of the work. At the end of the day, it's still a business. Organizations are still businesses, and it's very important to follow track and see how we're performing in order to sustain and be available to patients, to our teams, our staff, and so forth. So we're looking at it in a sense of how are we performing, how are we meeting those goals, objectives, to meet funder requirements, to meet financial goals that are set in order just to do the work. And to, again, meet the mission of an organization, I think is real important, not to miss the idea that the mission is connected to revenue, because that's what drives a company, and allows it to be in existence and so forth. So we're coming in from that lens to understand productivity. But now, as you speak, I think what's important is, and what's unique for us, is bringing this emotional intelligence piece into the conversation. It's not just recognizing your perspective and so forth, but how are the mandates or the expectations connecting to folks,
Yes.
and so forth. So administration has to also look at that and listen and hear what we're talking about. We'll get into solutions, but yeah.
Right. And that's, I mean, when we start talking about this, and as you know, and anybody who follows me knows, I look at everything through the brain and
Mhm.
neurotransmitters and emotions, right? So
Mhm.
when we start talking about productivity, immediately the clinical side, I sense a sense of anxiety. Just it's almost like a trigger, and I can bet to say a lot of clinicians and providers would feel the same way, because we went into our practice and our discipline because we care about patients, right?
Mhm.
And then we're like, well, don't give me that junk about, numbers. I don't want to hear it. So it's like that anxiety comes up. But from a manager standpoint, like
Mhm.
where you say, and the numbers, when I did work as a director, I felt the anxiety
Mhm.
when I had to talk to my clinicians about their productivity. I
Yes.
knew I was going to get kicked, right? I knew I was going
Mhm.
to get a fight. So it's that anxiety. So
Mhm.
so the next issue we were going to talk about was mediating the clinical complaints. So, okay, we have clinicians that are like, okay, I know that's my productivity level. There's no way I can meet it, or that is impossible.
Mhm.
And I say this from experience, but I say it from hearing coworkers in previous settings, immediately, this is impossible, and this is why, this is why, this is why. And usually clinicians, we just kind of spout out why it's not possible.
Mhm.
And do you find that in
Mhm.
the administrative setting, or do you know how does that come across to the administration when that happens?
Well, it depends. It can come across in a number of different ways. Again, as I guess the holders of accountability for the organization, you want to take into consideration that the challenges that a provider, a clinician, or the direct service folks are sharing with you. But at the same time, that accountability piece is still there. So you have to kind of go back in and investigate a little bit as to why the complaint is coming. Like, what is it that what stressor is it that the clinicians are experiencing that's blocking them from being able to perform? And also, is it legitimate in some cases? Not everyone um, is a high performer, which is
Right.
part of the reality.
Right.
Although it's, again, one of those anxiety moments where you don't necessarily want to say to someone, you're not performing your best and I know you can do more. But that's kind of what we're thinking also in some cases. In some cases, you got folks who are rock stars and it's natural to say, oh, what can I do for you? But most folks fall kind of in that middle. And then there's some that's at the bottom. And those are the challenging, difficult conversations, as you highlighted, to say, I think you can do more here and I got to push on you. And that don't feel comfortable. And I understand your complaint, but I don't know how valid the complaint is. So
Yeah.
we need to figure that out. So
And
that's that push pull.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I've worked in a variety of settings, from skilled nursing to rehab to outpatient to home health. And I see it across the board. It's not just, you, like you said, you do have clinicians that underperform. Maybe they're excellent clinicians, but they don't meet productivity level. And then you have, other folks that meet productivity, and they're still good clinicians.
Mhm.
You don't get complaints. So how, what is the difference? And then that's something you have to dig deeper. So the third issue we're going to address is clarifying the value of productivity.
Mhm.
So the thing that I want to throw out there right away is, I think most of clinicians understand why we should be productive, or that's the expectation. It's kind of like going to school, and of
Mhm.
course you want to get an A,
Mhm.
like everybody really wants to get an A. Is it
Mhm.
possible for everybody to get an A? No. So we know the expectation, let's say, for home health, well, you should see 35 to 40 visits a week, Okay, we know that's the expectation going in. Or for outpatient, well, you should cover, 4 patients an hour. We know that's the expectation. But I don't think we talk about it enough before we get into the field. I know a lot of our clinical experience, and I could reach out to some acquaintances and talk more about this and find out their perspective. But I think in the clinical experience, it's touched upon. When we're doing our field work, it's talked about, and we know once we get into the real world work setting, it's going to be an issue. But it's not we don't do the deep dive into this is how it works. So
Mhm.
from the clinical side, we know it's important, and we see it, we hear it, and it's there. But again, it's almost like we don't want to hear it, and but it's a necessary. So from the administrative point, is
Mhm.
there the value of productivity? I know you said it's numbers, and business is numbers. I mean, that's how you measure things, right? That's how you
Mhm.
measure. And clinicians, we measure things objectively, like Medicare, insurance, they want objective measurements. So
Mhm.
this is what productivity is to management. Is that accurate? Like
Right. That's
how we
very
measure.
accurate. Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, even schools now, the training institutions are offering more administrative courses, I think, and more administrative tracks. In this work, recognizing that the practitioners are the ones who are growing up in terms of being with the company for X amount of time, or just being in the field for X amount of time, and then naturally progressing into administration. And often what happens is that the link of knowledge and expertise to be an administrator doesn't follow with them, because it's not the focus of the programs and the training that one goes through. But now I'm starting to see, and others are starting to see, that administration pieces are being reintroduced into programs before folks even graduate, to give them a more ingrained understanding of that, of the need for these elements in the work. And it's really a matter of trying to help practitioners understand that, and just, well, like you said, they understand it, but just appreciate it more, and
Mhm.
so forth. And it also, in terms of clarifying the value, again, it really speaks to ability for a company to do more, not just for the patients or the folks they serve, but for the staff and team that they work with. Again, coming out of this COVID, we know it's very important to recognize the talent even more now, because competition is increased, and folks can go different places easier to get new jobs and roles and so forth. So revenue, in a way, helps to um, develop the team, develop the staff, to bring in the systems and the tools and resources, the technology to make the work flow more efficiently as well. But it all
Right.
still comes back to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
Somehow it has to be paid for.
Right. Right.
Everyone touches into the revenue cycle, if you will, and how they connect to the work. And so that's the new conversation, is how do we help folks see how they show up in relation to the dollars and cents? And
Right.
it doesn't, again, take away from the mission, but
Right.
it works in concert with the mission.
Oh,
Because
that's good.
you can't achieve the mission without adequate resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now that we've addressed the three issues that we're talking about, the easing the anxiety, mediating the complaints, and clarifying the importance of productivity, let's talk about solutions, right? We don't bring up problems if we don't have solutions. And that's what Aaron and I are here for, is to help you all with solutions to these issues. So the first one, easing anxiety between the providers and the administrators. Like, how do we do that? When I get that feeling, I always tell everybody the take 5 to focus technique, observe how you're feeling. When you start getting on me about my productivity, I hold my breath, I get tense in my, upper traps, and I feel my heartbeat a little faster. That means I'm going into fight or flight, right? So I'm getting ready to stick up for myself. What do we do about that? How do we ease that anxiety? What would you like to see from your perspective to ease that anxiety when you have to address the productivity issue?
Yeah. From administration side, I think part of our responsibility is to help improve that communication, and as we talk about emotional intelligence, to be more aware of others. So as you just described your process of anxiety when dealing with productivity, my job now as administrator is to tune into that, to see how you are starting to stress and connect to you in an open way, non-judgmental way, to say, Carrie, how can I help here? It's a partnership. How can we communicate in a way that pulls in your perspective, pulls in, again, that administrative perspective, give context, and I love to say, give the why, the reason why something is of urgency in that moment. That's an extra step that administrators have to get used to taking, because a lot of times it's like, well, I'm asking you to because
I
someone's
said so.
asking me and I'm the boss, or so, yeah, even to be blunt, yeah, because I said so. And you can't do that anymore. Like, the environment's different, and we really have to appreciate our practitioners and clinicians in a different way. So becoming aware of how you show up and how it's impacting you directly would be one solution there around that anxiety.
I like what you said about the why, because when I first started 23 years ago, and of course I was immediately hit with, here I'm like, what, 23 or 24 years old, and I'm immediately hit with, well, this is your productivity. I'm like, what the heck is that? Like, I really didn't know, well, this is the expectation, the number of people that you need to see a day. Okay, well, why? But I was so worried about being a good therapist that I didn't want to ask why, because I had my brain going 50 different places about being a good therapist, doing good documentation. I don't want to get sued. I'd better document this, this, and this. Did I talk to the doctor? Did I talk to the nurse? So productivity was like the last thing on my mind. But I am a curious person. I've always been a curious person. So giving me the why without having to ask for it, because I didn't ask for why back then. I don't even remember, maybe when I went into the home health industry in like 2007, so I'd been already out for like 8 years. Maybe then I was like, okay, the why. I mean, I did outpatient, but if somebody was giving me the why earlier in my career, maybe that would have helped my anxiety level, or my, going into fight or flight when you start getting on me about productivity, and that would definitely help. We're curious people, so giving us the why, and yes, having administration, it's just, if we're, and just to lead into, like, one of the future series we're going to address is like the generational issues that we have in our healthcare industry right now. So like you said, it doesn't work anymore to say, because I said so. Like it used to be that you could look at something because I said so, you know, a parent, why? Even kids challenge us anymore. Well, why? Being curious and learning more is a good thing. It's a great thing. The more we know, the better we can be. So giving us the why and not just saying because that's the way it is, because, you know, it's very helpful to have that why. So that's,
and it also, I was going to say, it also depersonalizes the issue too. It gives context to
so
the work and not the
that
person.
wall, you know, that invisible wall that is put up by your administration. I'm a clinician, and you know, productivity because I said so. Yes, it depersonalizes it. Says like we're a team. We're supposed to be a team. So yeah, that's great. I love the why thing. That really stuck out to me. Thank you, Aaron. So mediating the clinical complaints. Okay, so what I'm just going to go ahead and put this out there because I think this is, you know, the first one was kind of on administration, right? So to educate us and help us give the why. So what about the clinical complaints? I'm going to put this on the clinicians. What can we do as clinicians to understand the administration's requirements and asks? And when you all do give us the why, how do we incorporate that? How do we, you know what I think it is? I think it's going to require a mindset change for clinicians and providers, because we always come at it as we are doing what's best for our patients, period, end of conversation. I don't want to hear anymore. That's how I used to be, like really, before I started, you know, diving into emotional intelligence 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe even longer. You know, that was like, hey, I'm here for my patient, and that's it. So go somewhere else with that, right? We are going to, clinicians, providers, we need to work on our mindset to open our minds and say, okay, we are here for our patient. However, in this industry, it is a business. So we need to understand the business aspect of it. How can we communicate to administration? These are our frustrations. These are our barriers, without making it personal or getting defensive, or helping to build a wall, you know, that invisible wall. What can we do as clinicians to open our minds to help changes and help make things go smoother?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're describing, again, from our standpoint as EI practitioners, is that self-awareness piece. Now, so as we talked about awareness of others initially with the first issue, second, as you highlight here, we're talking now about your self-awareness. How are you showing up once a mandate comes out? You might not agree with it, but you still got to do the work, right? And so how to the practitioner or individual process through that to still get to where they need to go. And then in that statement, I hear the statement so much that we're here for our patients. We're here for our patients. And what I love to say too is that we all are. We're just doing the work in different ways, you know? So practitioners are there for the patients in one way. Administration is there to also be there for the patients, just from a different lens. But we're all part of the same team helping the same patients. There's no your patient versus my patient. They are the patients who we all are here for. So yeah.
The patients are our clients. You know, it's just like you said, you're in a different, the whole healthcare industry, we're supposed to be a team, right? So if my administration doesn't make sure the bills get paid, doesn't make sure that we get reimbursed, they're in the, you know, the admin are in the back office making sure that claims are covered, billing, you know, coding things the right way. I'm out there delivering the service. We're supposed to be a team, just like you said. It's not you versus us. It's us.
It's just us. Yeah.
The patient. It's just like nursing. You know, I tell my patients that that kind of, and especially in home health, they have all people coming in and out of their house, and they all think we're nurses, right? And I'm like, I can assure you, I am not going to stick you with a needle, because I have anxiety about needles too. So I am not going to stick you with a needle. I'm not going to do anything. I don't know. And so we all have our different roles that we play. So I love the way you framed that as, we all are here for the patient. It's just that we have our different roles. Man, it's just like maybe baking a cake, right?
Right.
Hey, put it all together and you get this awesome cake, but without the eggs or without the flour or without the sugar, it's not going to taste right. So we're baking a cake for our patients, and we all have a little piece to put in there. So wow, yeah, I like how you put that. So the clarifying the value of productivity. This is the one that I said I really wanted to talk about. Again, from the clinical standpoint, don't talk about us. Don't talk to us about business. That's not our role. And I said to you the other evening, as in our personal life, do we ignore our finances? Well, if you do, you get in trouble, financial trouble, you get in debt, So why would you ignore the financial aspect of your job? I want to work for a company that is financially healthy. I want to see news articles about how the company I work for is financially sound. I don't have to worry about my job because the financial aspect of it is solid. I don't want to see the company that I work for in the news because they had a huge loss or they had a huge Medicare investigation. Like, I want any company that I work for to be positive, right? So we should understand. It doesn't say you have to love the financial aspect of it, but just understand it. Again, it goes back to almost like school, okay? I'm not a history buff. You can ask my high school teachers, I'm like, oh, this is boring. I tried to find the great stuff in it, I picked out the really cool stuff and tried to do well in it. I didn't love it, but I had to do it to graduate high school, right? So I didn't love it, but I understood. I learned it. I understood it. Again, the emotional intelligence piece. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to love it, but understand that perspective. Understand the business side of it. So why do you have to code? Why is it such a pain to code properly? Because we need to be reimbursed properly, because we can't have that claim denied. If we have that claim denied, then we have to resubmit it and look at it again. Understand the process. I really do hope that in the medical and the healthcare colleges, they are inserting more of the business aspect of it, because from what I understand, like the chiropractic services, like they do address, because they just figure chiropractors are going to get out, they're going to graduate and open their own business or work for another chiropractor. We weren't, in school, in college, we would go work for a hospital or a nursing home or a home health agency, and they'll handle the business side of it. Understanding the business side of it, understanding how that process works and how productivity ties into that, I think is very important. And that goes back to the admin being very transparent and open about how you do the reimbursement, why it's important, and how that ties into our productivity expectations.
Yeah. Yep. And just adding quickly to that too, as we talk again about the emotional intelligence piece, we're talking now about positive influence. How do we influence folks positively around this issue of productivity? And we want to encourage insight and feedback from all team members at all levels of the organization, definitely including the clinicians and the practitioners in that conversation. So again, it feeds back into the why. So we're setting out, asking you to do this. Well, what happened as a result of it? Did it get done? What was the challenges? What were the strengths? What was successes? And constantly have that feedback mechanism so that everyone has the chance to buy into the value of productivity and actually define what productivity means for each individual company in and of itself. It might not be a universal term,
Right, right.
So
Yeah,
it might be interesting to take time for leadership and administration to work with practitioners to define what productivity means in a way that it lands um, and feels good for everyone, and it still
that's
meets the
yeah.
goals of the organization.
That's really good that you bring that up because I'm sure I've thought about it in all my time driving around doing home health, but somebody like myself that came from an outpatient aspect or a even pediatrics to adult aspect is different. The productivity expectations are different. Coming from skilled nursing setting into a hospital setting, productivity, reimbursement, it's going to be different.
Mhm.
So when we go through training, when we're training new folks to come onto the home healthcare industry, we really don't address that as much. We address proper documentation, all the ways to maintain sterile, keep COVID levels down, all this, all
Mhm.
that. But yes, defining productivity in a specific setting for specific clinicians in their aspect, that's a really good point. And being transparent too.
Yes. Yep.
Transparency, again, it goes back to emotional intelligence, which is why you and I decided to do this, because
Mhm.
it comes down to seeing the other person's perspective,
Mhm.
opening up your mindset, and being transparent, but doing it in a respectful way,
Right.
and just opening those lines of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
That's really good. Yes. Oh, this is awesome. So,
Mhm.
well, this is the Burnout to Brilliance, the Healthcare Leadership Series. This is our first series of several to come. Please join us on LinkedIn. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. We are opening our own Emotional Intelligence for Healthcare LinkedIn group that we'd love you to join. And that way we can open the conversation further and not limit it to just our webinars and series that we're going to do, but we can open it up to the different fields. I'm in the therapy realm, but we'd love to see nurses,
Mhm.
administration jump on and give us your challenges. And again, the communication is so key. We need to address these issues in healthcare so that we can continue to be there for the patient and have rewarding, happy careers, which is what we're here to do. All right.
Absolutely. That's it.
Yeah. Do you have any last minute comments, Aaron?
Oh yeah, just share your thoughts, share your experiences. As you said, that's going to help us to shape these series and conversations. And our goal is ultimately to be able to provide and be a resource to fellow practitioners, administrators, and alike in the field. So please jump on and share as much as you can, and we'll be here to support.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Follow us and connect with us on LinkedIn, and join us next time for our next series in Burnout to Brilliance, the Healthcare Leadership Series. Thank you.